Are you thinking of getting guppies? Let me show you how to set up your tank properly and avoid these mistakes most beginners make. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ducky Aquatics. In this episode, I'm going to be going over guppies. I've been keeping them for over 27 years, so I've learnt quite a lot in that time. So this will be the first of a three-part series. First one, obviously, how to set up a tank for guppies and look after them. The second one, how to breed guppies, different methods for doing that. And the third one, which is a very important one, is guppy health. So I'll be covering bacterial, fungal, and parasitic infections in guppies and best ways to manage and or treat those issues with them. So the best point to start, why keep guppies? Firstly, they're absolutely stunning, beautiful fish. I've had my entire fish room full of them at one point. When Nick was here filming a couple of years ago, there was quite a few then. The second reason is they're small tank compatible, which is great. So if you've only got limited amount of space or you frequently have to move house, guppies are great fish to have because you can have them in a 20-litre tank or a 60-litre tank and they'll thrive, which is in the US system, that's 5 gallons and I think 15-gallon tanks. So if you've got anything like that and you want to have little scapes and just a few guppies that are really quite colourful and easy to look after, they're a great fish for that. They are still beginner-friendly fish, but they can die easily if you don't set up their tank correctly, which is what we're going to do in today's video. So let's get into that. So for filtration, I've set up, this is going to be the breeding rack for my guppies. I've just got some in here that were in some tanks that I've got to plant out, so this is a great time to actually film this video. I've got hang-on back filters. I've turned them off because they're making watery noises that's going to interfere with filming, but they are great for breeding guppies or caring for guppies or just a guppy tank in general, because their inlets here, you can put a sponge over there and it stops you sucking up guppy fry. And if you've got large males with big flowing tails, you having a sponge over there or even that guard there just stops them being sucked up and blown away by the intake. And you can position the hang-on back filter, we get a smaller one so the flow can go that way, so it keeps most of the tank relatively calm, because too much flow from a power head filter, which usually does still work fine for guppies, but if you've got really ornate males with Dumbo ears and all that, having too much flow can really stress them out because they're struggling to swim and feed, so they can actually starve to death because the other fish, younger fish, or the large females will get more food than they are. So if you're going for a powered filter, I'd say your hang-on back is your best option. Sump filters can be okay, but the issue with sump filters for guppies is more often than not, I don't know how it happens, even with like the finest mesh and that, I always end up with guppy fry in the sump itself. So just to avoid that, I say sump filters aren't the best for them. Matten filters are great for them as well. So if you've got the filter that goes all the way at the back with the air tube and everything, Matten filters work really well for guppies. And of course, the faithful old sponge filter. I'm trying to avoid that for these ones because when I've got to catch fish out of these tanks, they know exactly where I can't get them, which is behind the sponge filter, and I don't want to put water all over the freshly painted walls of the fish room. So I'm going to try and stay away from sponge filters for these racks, and I'm just going to cycle through different hang-on backs. Now this is a 60-litre tank, which is the one we're going to be setting up for guppies. So I've had the water in here aging, so it's cycling. I was able to do a quick cycle. So the way I was able to do a quick cycle is all my substrate was in buckets still wet. So it was an active or live substrate. So all the bacteria was still in that substrate. But you can have fine gravel, or you can have sand, or you can do what I've done and mix both together and have that as your substrate for your tank. So what I'm going to be doing for this tank, which you can see, you can't see it, but there's actually a gradient here. So the front is quite thin for the substrate and the back is thicker. So we're going to be planting out from the middle of the tank, right where this little ridge of substrate is, up to the back, so that there's a clear spot at the front here. So when I set up my guppy tanks, I like there to be a clear spot at the front so the fish can come to the front when I feed them, so I can, one, look at my fish and appreciate them, two, from that position I am able to assess their health, and three, it makes cleanup, if you've got to clean up any excess food, way easier because it's just going to fall to the front there and it's easier to get up when there's no plants hiding all the mess. So let's talk lighting for the guppies. These days LED lights have become really cost effective, which is fantastic because LEDs do two things really well. One, show your fish really well, and two, grow plants really well. The added benefit is because LEDs use less electricity, they're a lot more cost effective long term for power, just depending on how long you keep them on for. So this is just a Chihiro's light. The reason why I like the Chihiro's is they have dimmers. So if it's too bright, turn it down and it's still great. So if you have algae problems, having a dimmer on your light makes it so much easier to get the balance right for your plants, as well as showing your fish and controlling algae. So that's a huge plus. You might be wondering how long to leave your light on. That will really depend a lot on the plants you're trying to grow and your personal preference. If you're not home all the time, you don't want to have your light on while you're not home, that's completely fair enough. Just choose lower light plants and you can just have your light on at the hours you're at home. If you're frequently home at odd hours and you want to give it some more of a stability, you can get a timer. I have some timers that I've got to put up onto these PowerPoints and they work really well. And just the hours that you're roughly home, have the timer on for that and then that'll be fine. So I would say at least 4 hours, but you could do 8 hours if you wanted to, or if you want to keep it as a night light, that's fine too. Just make sure you've got your lighting parameters set, so if it's going to be on for a really long time and you've got low light plants that are slow growing, have the dimmer on so it's not too bright and creating a whole bunch of algae. Otherwise you'll have what my fish room usually looks like, which is algae laden tanks everywhere. So I've put a Hard Scape item in here. So Hard Scape for guppies is real easy. You can pretty much use whatever you want. I've got this one in here, which is a creation that comes from Mick at Glass Case Creation. So he's actually made this for me. So it's just Anubias on a rock with driftwood that's attached there. It's a little bit of moss so that can hopefully grow and train with some swasitang on the driftwood itself, which is great. So Mick makes these things really well. You can get more intricate ones, but this is just a really simple one because I'm going to plant out around the tank. So if you get stuff like this where you kind of make islands with the rocks and the driftwood, or you buy them from Mick and you attach your own plants to them, that's a great way if you need to pull everything out of the tank because you've got to catch fish out or you've got to do anything in there. It makes it really simple, so you can have a couple of hardscape items like this, like 1, 2, or 3, and then have them densely planted out like that. And that's a really great way to have a modular design for your aquarium and move around hardscape if you like to tinker in your tanks all the time. So keep that in mind. But this one is going to have that in there as the kind of center feature. And I've got a bucket full of crypts that I'm going to plant around. So I want this to be more of a low tech, low light tank. So the plants that I'm going to go for are Anubias, swasitang, Java moss, and of course crypticorns. So guppies do really well with pretty much any plant. So if you've got Java ferns or you've got stem plants like rotala, pearlweed, water wisteria, they do really well with all those plants as well. Those plants can be quite fast growing, so if you don't want to do a lot of maintenance, then you can stick to your more low tech, low light plants and they will do really well. The reason why I'm going to put crypts here, because you can get all different size crypts, it's going to be more of a taller carpet. So from there all the way around here, this is going to be crypts in the mid-ground. At the back here, I may put some Valicineria, which is a really easy to grow grass, and that would provide the shelter for any guppy fry that will happen to occur in this tank. Then just have the hang on back filter at the back there. I'm not going to put one on this because I've not given myself enough room between the wall. But the Valicineria being in the corner will hide the intake for there as well. So you're not really limited to what you can have in with your guppies because everything will do really well and benefit them in some way. So I've finished planting out the tank. You'll notice that my planting is very bad and the tank is full of debris now. So in that bucket I had a bit more crypt bulbs than I thought I did because there weren't that many leaves on there. So all of here has been planted out with crypts, and you can see the robin's nest of roots that I didn't cut still there. And if you just see right there is some of the root structure, or the bulb part of the crypticorn, and that will all shoot out new crypt heads as well. So these may melt back before they regrow properly, but they'll be very happy to be in this substrate, and this would be a really good low tech and low light setup for guppies. So crypticorns sometimes get crypt melt when you transplant them, divide them up and plant them. So that's where all the leaves will die back. That's absolutely fine. You just wait, they'll shoot out new leaves from the bulb, and then they'll be back with a vengeance, and they can grow quite thick. So this will be a really nice carpet in a few weeks. I'm going to put a hang on back filter in here first. So this is going to imitate my cycle. If you're setting up your first guppy tank, and you've gotten to this stage, you've planted it out and everything, set your filter up. If it's a brand new setup, leave it to filter for 2 weeks, and then it's ready to add your fish in. So I'm going to let this filter for a couple of hours, and then when I get back, let's add in some fish. So the next thing to do after we've let it filter, this is not going to be an amazing aquascape, just so everyone knows. This is a tank that in 6 months' time, assuming I haven't moved it for the fish room to be rearranged, will take 6 months to look really nice, and by that time this will be a nice carpet of crypticorns throughout the tank surrounding this little lone island of Anubias. So for the water parameters, stability is your friend. Don't go chasing the numbers, because more than likely the guppies you'll buy in your local area should have some tolerance to your water condition. If they're imported, that's a different story, but I'll cover that in the breeding video. So as you can see, there's no heater in this tank, but the water is pretty stable, about 23 degrees, which is, must be 70 degrees Fahrenheit for you guys in the US. I would say between 22 to 25 is the best conditions. You can have your guppies in a lot warmer water, but the drawback is I find they're more susceptible to diseases as well as stress, because their metabolisms will speed up a lot. So if you're not feeding them correctly, you'll run into a lot more problems having the water warmer opposed to having it a more stable, cooler side around the low 20s. That's my personal preference, but do what works for you in your conditions. Obviously for me in Gold Coast in Australia, I actually don't need to have a heater on any of my fish tanks to keep them around that temperature range. The coldest my fish room will get in winter is about 17 degrees overnight, and that is still tolerable for the fish that I keep. So guppies certainly don't want to be kept at that temperature long term, but they will weather those conditions for short periods, so they can handle a bit of a fluctuation in temperature as long as it's not a rapid fluctuation in temperature. So stability is your friend. Don't have the temperature swing in any direction more than 3 degrees in say a 12-hour period, because that will stress out the guppies and likely cause a fish die-off. So the one thing I would say that the guppies really do need is water hardness, so the carbonate hardness. And the easiest way to do that is just little bits of crushed coral or even coral stack in your fish tank, or if you are using a sump or whatever, you can hide all that sort of stuff down there, and that will just keep the carbonate hardness at a level that the guppies will really like. So another thing that you can run into, so if you haven't cycled your tank long enough and you've put too many guppies in there at once, you can cause an ammonia spike. This will absolutely rip through the male guppies or any of your larger female guppies really quickly. They're very susceptible to large ammonia spikes, and you'll see their fins literally look like they melt away. So it's always better to make sure you do cycle your tanks correctly, just to give the fish their best chance of survival. adding in your beneficial bacteria and all that works really well. If you have already cycled media and put that in as your substrate, that works really well. And of course, a trusty old sponge filter or a cycled filter that can go straight into your tank. That will all help stop those things from occurring. Now, as far as picking your guppies, I have selected a male and 2 females. Hopefully you guys can see that in this old Chinese takeaway container. So the male is just down here with a nice red cap, nice female here, and one at the back as well. So I put these 3 aside because I thought they had the perfect body shapes to just demonstrate the difference between healthy males and females. So you can see these females have roundness to them, but they're not overly round. So you can see they've got even body shapes going down to the tail, so they don't just have this big balloon that is their stomach. Yeah, these females are a bit younger, so they're not going to have like a huge amount of fry in them, which can change that, but you don't want towards the tail of the guppy going paper thin. Obviously the fins are different, but just where the black part of the guppy is starting, the camera did not like that, where the black part of this female guppy on the right hand is starting, you can see how it's got a lot more even taper down towards the tail. If you see them go from wide to really thin really quickly, kind of like a tadpole, that's a body shape you want to avoid for your females. Conversely, for the males, you don't want that sort of thing going to a really thin tail as well, because they will not be very strong swimmers and they'll pass on very weak genetics, and it can be a sign that they actually are having health issues. So you can see this male has a little bit of roundness to his stomach, but he's not chesty. Might be a bit hard for you to see that. I'll actually let him out. Hopefully he doesn't go and hide. So this male here, you can see he's got a round-ish stomach, but he's not got a protruding chest that looks like he should be wearing a bra. If you get chesty males like that, it can be that they've been fed the wrong foods that really don't agree with their digestive tract, or it can also be a sign that they've got something like a tapeworm inside them. So you want to avoid that, and you want to avoid any of the guppies that get really slender towards the tail, because they're going to be very bad swimmers and just genetically weak, so they're more prone to dropping dead very quickly on you. With the behavior of the guppies, even though I've literally just let these guys out into the tank, you can see they're quite active and they're swimming properly. They haven't got a waddle to them, so you're not seeing them going like this. That's a huge indicator that there's something wrong with the guppy. So they're swimming well. If I put food in there, undoubtedly they'll eat that really quickly and without any issues. Guppies, of course, always usually hang towards the surface because their mouth is towards their head. So that's not an issue. As these guys relax and become more comfortable in the tank, they will start to occupy the mid-water as well. But guppies are usually surface feeders with their mouth hanging towards the top of the tank. Something else to look out for your guppies, if they have fin clamping, so see how the tail fins of all 3 of these guppies are really nicely flared out like that. That's a really good sign that they're healthy. If you see them clamping like that or starting to droop in some of the delta-tailed males, which have really big fins, that's an indicator that there's something wrong. That could be bacterial, it could be fungal. So you want to avoid buying those fish. It is very hard to go to an aquarium and go into there to pick out guppies without at least 1 or 2 looking, quite frankly, shit. If you're in Australia, we're lucky, especially on Gold Coast and Brisbane. You've got in Gold Coast Yatla, you've got Mick from Glass Case Creations. He gets his guppies from me, so I make sure I don't sell him bad fish. Of course, fish do deteriorate with age, so they're not going to be amazing their entire life. So always keep that in mind. Don't pick fish that you think might be too big or too old. And if you go to Brisbane, you go to Nick's store, he does a great job of making sure he has good quality guppies as well. Now, the other telltale sign, if there's anything wrong, check the entire tank, make sure there's no red worms hanging out of the cloacas of any of the fish, because that would be Camellinus redworm. And if you haven't got the medicine to treat them, it's a death sentence for the fish. Even me, when I treat my fish for Camellinus redworms, and I know that there's an active infestation in those fish, it usually has a 50% mortality rate. So you want to try and get fish that are just healthy and have no issues. So make sure you take your time and don't just buy the cheapest one that you see straight away. These guys swimming around, you can see how comfortable they are, and they're doing what guppies should be doing, which is actively swimming and looking for food. The male's already chasing the females, which is a great sign. So that's literally as hard as it is to breed guppies as well. Male will just wiggle upside the female and impregnate her with a flick of his gonopodium, which is the fin underneath him. So you can see how it hugs his body compared to the female here, who has a triangular fin underneath her, like underneath her stomach. So that's how you tell for the finnage of the guppies, because female guppies used to be all very bland, same as endlers, but like the endler females, but now female guppies can be just as colourful as the males. So the colourful ones being the males is no longer the standard. If you want to get the most out of the lifespan of your guppies, believe it or not, keeping males with males only will make them live longer. I don't know what that says for humans as well, because there's lots of old couples where the husband died first, so I don't know if there's a connection there, but it is the same for guppies as well. The females and the males will live longer if you have them only with other females and other males in single-gendered tanks. But that's assuming you don't want to colony spawn them, because if you have these guys in together, I'd say these three in 6 months will have populated this tank to at least 10 times this population. There's not really a limit on the amount of guppies you can have in a tank, like if they breed themselves, because in my personal experience, if you have male and female guppies in a tank, they will breed readily. They will also eat the fry if they catch them. Sometimes they get used to the fry and they stop hunting them, but those fry will only ever grow to be adults if there's enough food and stuff available for that. So if you're feeding your fish the way you just normally feed it and they've had babies in there, it's not uncommon to see the babies never reach maturity because they're just not getting the food with the adults. Having said that, I've also experienced, and a lot of other guppy breeders have experienced this too, when you have large females in your tank, they can all simultaneously drop a lot of fry, and then the large females within a couple of days of each other will all die as well. So I don't know whether or not that's an evolutionary thing or hormonal thing, but I've experienced that many times with guppies and endlers. The large females have their last lot of babies. Even feeding them the best food I can, those females and stuff will just die. But they usually have quite a few babies before that happens, and that I don't know whether or not it's because they sense the tank is at capacity, and with the hormones of giving birth, they then just give up on life and die. But yeah, I've noticed that quite a few times happen. I know a lot of other guppy breeders who have had that exact experience as well. So if that does happen to you, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes large guppy females just drop fried, then drop dead. It is more uncommon to see them start wasting away after dropping fry. They kind of just usually drop fry, then in the next couple of days die and look healthy otherwise. If you're finding your females are dropping fry, then becoming very skinny and wasting away, usually that means they're not getting enough protein, or the carbonate hardness or something is not correct, and they're actually just cannibalizing their own body to produce the fry. Now, hypothetically, you've set up your guppy tank, you're really happy with the way everything is, maybe they're having some babies, but you want to get some new ones because the couple that you've got are doing really well. So in this example, I've got more of the same, so I can release them at the same time. But say this is you've come back from the aquarium, you've got your new fish. There's two ways you can do it. If you've gotten them from the same pet store, this usually works quite well. You can float them. When they get used to the water conditions, then simply release them, and that's fine and dandy, assuming that's within a couple of days. If it's been more than a couple of days, you don't put the fish tank water into your aquarium, you pour them through a net and then you can put them into your aquarium. If you've gone to a completely different breeder, a completely different pet store, I would highly recommend you quarantine your new guppies, because they're going to have a different bacterial load to what your guppies are used to, and it can cause all of your fish to die. Usually what happens is your new fish will go into the aquarium and the bacteria from your aquarium will overwhelm them, and you'll see your new fish within a couple of days start dropping dead. Then your old fish all of a sudden start getting stressed out, wasting away and dropping dead as well, because the new bacteria is able to get a foothold in your aquarium as well. So now there's two different competing bacterias and they're fighting inside the fish, and it just doesn't work out well for your guppy tank at all. So quarantining your fish is really important. If you can't have a dedicated quarantine tank and you have to put them into your aquarium, the type of filtration I recommend that will solve this a lot of the time is simply just a Powerhead UV sterilizer. You can go on eBay and buy them real cheap. That's usually where I get my UV sterilizers in Powerhead form from, and I just buy the Sun brand, and they work really well. That will keep your water crystal clear, as well as kill any pathogens that are free floating in the tank. But if you have any fish die in your aquarium, it's important to remove them straight away. Don't let the other fish nibble on the bodies, because if they've died from an active bacterial infection, that will spread the bacteria very quickly, because they'll be ingesting it, and that will cause more fish to die off very quickly. So this male here, at the top here, he's not a very good male in my opinion, if the camera will focus. And it won't. There we are. So see how he's got a very slender body? So very slender, his tail's not completely flared out. And top down, if the camera again will focus, he's a little bit slender. So I'm actually going to remove him, and when you're watching him swim, he's got more of a wiggle than the other fish do. So this is an example of a male I would not buy. It's also a male I would not sell either. He might recover being put in the tank by himself, but just as he is, he's not a very good specimen to have in the tank. So I'm going to remove him once I finish filming. But the rest of them, very active, healthy, good shapes to the bodies, and they should do quite well. I'm just not going to risk it with a male that looks like that. So you can get females that will start to look like that as well, and I'd remove them straight away if they start doing that. Either quarantine them separately and try and treat them like that. Otherwise, you may need to euthanize them if they don't show any improvement, or they may just die during quarantine. Because usually that's an indicator of a bacterial infection that you really don't want to have go crazy in your tank, and that's usually TB, like the fish TB, which has skeletal deformities, lesions and ulcers and like that, and it's actually transferable to you as a person as well. So you can have I don't know, if you go to fish meetings or whatever, there's usually one person who's had fish for their entire life, and they've either contracted it themselves or they know someone who has had fish TB, and it takes years to recover from, and they have to have these ulcers actually cut out because they're not just going to get better with antibiotics. You can't get rid of TB from your aquariums. It's pretty much present in every aquarium. The thing that sets it, like the active bacteria, off as a problem in the aquarium is usually stress on the fish. So if the fish are getting too stressed, like these guys have come from outside, and it's the rapid temperature fluctuations we're starting to get because I have to get everything inside for winter. That is most likely what's stressed him out enough to make his immune system weak enough for the TB to be affecting it. It may not be TB, it could be a different infection that's getting him, but that would be my guess as to what's happening, because you can see he has some tattered fins as well. So male to female ratio of guppies. This guy up here is a nice big delta tail. He's king in this aquarium. He's got like 7 girlfriends in here. They're all a little bit immature, but they will be breeding size pretty soon. That is probably excessive for one male, but if you're line breeding them, then you pick your best couple of males, and that's how you do it. You just have your females in there. But if you've just got a nice display tank, I have done this many times. It's going to go counter to what most YouTube videos or people would tell you. You can have your guppies at a 1-to-1 ratio, assuming you've got over 10 of them. So if you've got a tank like this, you've got 10 guppies in there, you can have 5 males and 5 females. The most dominant male will usually start to take charge. It's like, at first, they will start to all just harass the females, but eventually one male will be more dominant than the others, and he'll kind of fend off some of the other males, and you'll see them actually displaying in front of the females. A lot of people I've spoken to didn't realize this, but guppies, like antlers, will actually display to females when they're kept in a colony tank or pond or whatever. So the male will swim in front of the female. He'll kind of bend his body like that and then flare his fins and kind of shake towards her and try and dazzle her that way. If they have never encountered females, because, you know, a lot of breeders will separate the males from females to raise them faster. They won't initially do that. Eventually they will start doing that when they have to compete with the other males, but the first couple of weeks or maybe the first month or something, it'll be kind of a free-for-all, because, I mean, that's not just fish, that's men in general. If they haven't seen a woman in a while, they're just going to chase them. So if you have a colony tank, yeah, I'd say you can get away with a 1-to-1 ratio of males to females. That's absolutely fine. If you're going for more of a dedicated breeding setup and you're having smaller tanks, definitely do trios, so 2 females to 1 male. These are more of what I would call a short fin guppy, so they haven't got really long flowy tails. These males are therefore stronger swimmers than, say, like a delta tail guppy or a Dumboian mosaic. So don't mix those types of varieties together, because these short fin ones will actually be able to outcompete those males for food. So then you start having your really nice guppies starting to die while these ones are having no issues at all. Also, if you have bedders, these guppies with more rounded fins are much better community tank mates with bedders, because the bedders will see a Dumboia mosaic guppy or any Dumboia guppy, and to them it will look like a juvenile bedder trying to square up with them, and it's very common for them to then start harassing each other. I've heard a lot of videos as well say for compatible tank mates for guppies, you can use mollies, swordtails and platies. My personal opinion is they are terrible tank mates to have in with guppies, because they are much stronger swimmers. They are better at feeding than guppies, because guppies have a lot smaller bodies, and you can see the musculature from the stomach to the tail is a lot thinner than a swordtail molly or a platy. So they have a lot more trouble competing for food. I just personally, in my experience, having kept both together in the same tanks before, if you have too many platies or too many swordtails or too many mollies, they outcompete the guppies very quickly, and then soon you won't have any guppies left just through them not getting enough to eat. They will eat the fry of the guppies as well, so you won't have anything to replace the adults once they die as well. You can have some cichlids in there with them, particularly the dwarf cichlids, but it's also not uncommon for things like pistogrammas, the males, to eat all the guppy fry, or if you've got endlers or something in the smaller males, they can get picked off by larger pistogrammas very easily. So I find the best tank mates for them are actually your bottom dwellers. So if you have Otocinclus, they're great to have in with guppies, bristlenose, or any of your Corydoras. So they are all bottom feeders. They're not going to interfere with the guppies. So if you do a community tank with guppies, think of it in layers. Guppies will feed from the top third, which means if you want to have something like neon tetras usually get along with guppies reasonably well. They'll occupy the mid-water. You may find it's harder to feed the neons than it is the guppies, because guppies are going to intercept the food at the top. And then at the bottom here, you can have your bristlenose, you can have your cories, and things like that. Even coolie loaches usually are fine to have in with guppies, and they're going to occupy the lower half of the tank. So when you're feeding them, this is a great segue into that. Feeding guppies flake food is probably the worst food you can feed them. They'll do well outside in a pond with flake food, because there's so many other extras that they're getting when you have them in a pond. especially from like insect larvae. If they're in a full sun position, they can eat the green water, like all the organisms that culture with green water. So in an aquarium, flake food I'd put as the worst food to feed them. Frozen food is a really good one to have. I think freeze-dried food is actually the best one to have, so I'll go grab a container of what I feed mine. So the freeze-dried food I feed my guppies is this one. It's freeze-dried black worms. They come in cubes, and one cube will do a couple of tanks. So you divide like a quarter of it up. You can stick it against the glass inside here, and that's absolutely fine for them to feed. And you can create one of the little feeding balls on the side of the tank. But one cube will do, you know, if this many guppies in here would only be about an eighth of a cube. So I've had these guppies in here, that sizes in all them. I've maybe used a half a cube to feed all of them. So it does work out to be quite effective. The best top tier food I'd say to feed your guppies is of course live baby brine shrimp. I also feed mine live Daphnia. So if I go through my mess of a fish room because it's still under construction, I have many different Daphnia cultures and I can feed my guppies from these. So they're the best foods to feed them. In terms of frozen food, your frozen brine shrimp is fine. Your frozen bloodworm is fine as well. I know Nick from Keeping Fish Simple, he's had issues with his frozen bloodworm. I've never had issues with my frozen bloodworm. So I readily feed my fish those foods and they have great results. You can feed them pellet food as well, but like flake food, it's not the be-all and end-all of foods for guppies. Occasionally they do enjoy algae wafers, so if you do have autosynclists and you do have bristlenose and you're having a community aquarium like that, when you chuck in the algae wafers for them, keep in mind your guppies are going to pig into them as well. So that's really it in terms of feeding them. For the tank maintenance, I usually do no water change aquariums because I overstock my tanks with plants and they do a lot of the heavy lifting for me. That's not to say I will never do a water change on the aquarium. If you are doing a no water change aquarium, which is probably a bit of a misleading title for them, all you've got to do is just wait. If you see your fish starting to swim differently or not act correctly the way a guppy should be acting as a healthy fish, then that's time to just do a water change. I don't recommend, if you do water changes, to do a massive 50% water change. It's not going to have a huge benefit for them, especially if you're doing it in winter. I would say a 25% water change fortnightly, depending on how many guppies you got in there. If you've got a lot in there, you can do 25% every week. But if you don't, like in winter, if you're somewhere where it's cold, get a bucket, however much water you're taking from that aquarium, have an equal amount of water just sitting to warm up to that temperature before you put it in there, because that's usually what has like disastrous effects for guppies when people do water changes, is a sudden temperature shock, or they've got too much chlorine in the water and they haven't put enough dechlorinizer into their water before they've added it back into the tank. So things that can affect your town water is obviously severe weather events. We've just had a cyclone recently, so during that time of heavy rain and stuff like that, assume that they're putting in more chlorine to help clean the water that's going through the town water supply. So you'll need slightly more dechlorinator for your tanks when you do that. You just kind of need to be aware of what's happening weather-wise around you for that, to know exactly when you need to do that. So it's a bit hard to say, which is why if you've got it sitting there the night before you're going to do a water change for your display tank, that also helps the chlorine just gas off naturally as well. Of course, UV rays is better because that breaks down the chlorine faster. but just having it to sit there and gas off a bit will make a huge difference as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of covered everything. I know someone's probably a bit uncertain about overstocking, so I would say for guppies, if you're initially stocking your tank, go 1 guppy per 2 liters, or even 1 guppy per 2.5 liters. So that'd be 1 guppy per gallon. So if you've got a 5 gallon tank, you have 5 in there. We've established these are 20 liter tanks. 5 would be like if you're a beginner for guppies, 5 is a perfect starting point to have in a 20 liter tank. If you're more advanced, you can definitely get away with having 10 guppies in a 20 liter aquarium. But if they start breeding themselves, you don't need to freak out that they're going to crash the tank that quickly, as long as you're just keeping an eye on the tank. So if they breed too many and you're keeping up the food for them all to grow to adults in these tanks, be aware you are going to have to change water. Even if you're doing a no water change aquarium, if you've got too many fish in there and it's going to start affecting the water quality, you are going to have to start changing some water in there. So I know that's kind of one of those questions. It's like, how long is a piece of string? But that's really how you need to approach it when you've got guppies in there. If you don't want to have guppy fry everywhere in your tank and breed a heap of them, you can have a betta either living with your guppies, unless they're one of the varieties that will clash with the betta, or you can have a betta in a separate tank and just feed that betta guppy fry, because they'll absolutely love that, and that will engage their predatory instincts, which will be great stimulation for the bettas as well. And in the rare cases the betta doesn't want to eat them, you can have guppies in with your betta. So I mean, it's definitely not a lose-lose situation, however you look at it. So I hope that has helped. If you have any questions at all, leave a comment and I will reply to you. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I hope you enjoyed this.